Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of hashtag Ask the Minimalist Live. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn. I am riding solo today. It's because I'm supposed to be in Florida right now with Ryan. We have a coffee shop down there called Bandit Coffee Co. And my plane got canceled yesterday. And so I'm stuck here in sunny, no wait, it's not sunny, is it? It's snowy Missoula, Montana. Sorry, I was thinking forward to sunny St. Petersburg, Florida. But that's all right. So I'm here and I'm solo, but I'm going to answer some of your questions today. And so let's see here. Ryan and I just had a documentary come out. It's called Minimalism, a documentary about the important things. And it came out this summer in theaters. It hit online later this summer. And now it is available on Netflix, finally. So we're finally on Netflix. And so we've had hundreds of thousands of people watching it on Netflix. So some of you might have questions about the documentary. If you can't find it in your country, you can always find it on Vimeo. It's available worldwide on Vimeo. And so I'd love to answer some questions for you. Sean, I've got podcast Sean here with me right now. He's monitoring this. This is the first time we've ever used YouTube Live, by the way. I don't see any questions on my screen, which is either a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. So let me refresh what I've got here, and we'll see if anyone has any questions. Do you see a video of me at all anywhere? I've got people watching me. It says there are eyeballs aggregated onto the screen. So I could pontificate for a few minutes. Do you see anywhere where there are questions? Or is anyone making comments here? Yes. All right, sweet. Here's how we're going to do it then. So we have podcast Sean here. He's going to throw out the questions that he finds to be the most relevant. You'll hear his deep baritone voice in the background. We typically don't give Sean a microphone, by the way, because he's much more intelligent than us, and he would make us sound far dumber than we are. And so... we're going to handle it this way. He'll throw out some questions. I will answer them impromptu, this sort of extemporaneous exchange between you and I. And maybe we'll answer questions until my water is gone. What do we got, Sean?
A lot of hellos.
A lot of hellos. Well, hello!
Okay, one just popped up. Are you planning on making another movie in the future?
Are you planning on making another movie in the future? My answer to that is I don't know. I think those are three of the most powerful words in the English language, by the way. Just saying I don't know abdicates you not completely from your responsibilities, but from having to know everything. Now, I will tell you this. So Ryan and I, 6 years ago this month, we started the Minimalists.com. And that journey started before that even. As I had simplified my life back in 2009, my mother died and my marriage ended both in the same month. And those two events really forced me to look around and start to question what had become my life's focus. And I realized I was so focused on the wrong stuff, right? And I forsook the things that were most important to me. And I embarked down this journey of minimalism where I started letting go of the excess stuff in my life, mainly so I could start focusing on what was truly important to me. And figuring out what was important to me. So my health, my relationships, passion, contribution, growth. These are the core values that I uncovered after letting go of the excess stuff in my life. And people at work started coming to me and saying, you seem so much less stressed, you seem so much calmer, you seem happier, is what my best friend, a guy named Ryan Nicodemus, he came up to me and he said, hey, you seem happier. And it's not that my life was perfect, it was far from perfect, and it wasn't stress-free or free of anxiety, it was just improving my overall situation, letting go of the more trite, vapid problems and improving the problems I had in my own life. And so by letting go of the excess stuff, people around me started noticing the benefits of minimalism, the benefits of simplifying my life. Because I never jumped up and said, look at me, I'm becoming a minimalist. And you should too, because all of you have so much crap and I'm judging you. No, even now, Ryan and I aren't going out proselytizing. I don't want to convert anyone to minimalism. That's not the idea here. What we're trying to do is share a recipe that's worked really well for me and a slightly different recipe that's worked really well for Ryan. And that's what we've really done over the last 6 years. So when we first started the Minimalists.com, it was because Ryan was like, hey, I've been journaling about my whole process of simplifying after he had found out about Minimalism from Me. And he did this crazy thing called a packing party. For those of you who aren't familiar, check out his TEDx talk that he did. You can just go to our YouTube page there, youtube.com/The Minimalists. We have 2 TEDx talks there. I did one, and he did all the background theatrics. That one was this year. And then a couple years ago, he did one called A Rich Life with Less. And in that TEDx talk, he talks about this packing party where he boxed up everything that he owns, literally, pretended like he was moving. So he had this huge 2,000 square foot condo, and everything he owned, he boxed up as if he were moving. So even his furniture, his electronics, his toiletries, his clothes, his kitchen utensils, everything that he owned, pretending he was moving. And over the course of about 3 weeks, he unboxed only the items he needed. And he learned some pretty important lessons throughout that process. Mainly at the end of this 3-week process, 80% of his stuff was still in boxes. And you're like, I can't even remember what's in most of these boxes. I worked so hard over the last decade to accumulate all these things to make me happy, but those things aren't doing their job. And so he decided to let go of all of it. And through that process, he was journaling. And about a month later, he came to me, and this was the fall of 2010, and he said, I think other people could find value from this journey. I found value from your story, Josh, and I think other people would find value from our story. And so you've been talking about these different websites out there that led you toward minimalism. Maybe we could share our story as well. And so that's where the Minimalists.com started, was with that 21-day journey, that packing party, and the lessons learned from that, really. And from that process, what we learned is, what? People are getting value from this. So I kept writing more and more about it. You see, throughout my 20s, I wanted to write literary fiction. That was really my passion, the thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to write books. And so this is a very circuitous answer to answer the question, but I'm getting there, I promise. So I wanted to write books mostly, right? And then we started blogging. In fact, we didn't even know it was called a blog at the time. We just started writing these essays online, putting them up online at our website. And people started getting value from that. They started sharing it with their friends and family. And that first month, we had 52 people visit our website, which was really great. But it was only great because I spent most of my 20s getting rejection letters from people, agents and publishers telling me no, 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 no. And now people were finally saying yes to what I was creating. At least a few dozen people were. But the cool thing about that is when you find value in something, I don't know about you, but when I find value in something, I tend to share it with the people I care about. So a blog post or a movie or a TEDx talk or a podcast episode, if I enjoy something, I'll share it with the people I care about, hoping they get the same kind of value that I got from the thing. And so over the last 6 years, we found different vehicles to add value to people's lives. This is getting back to answer your question. You needed some context first. And so we wrote our first book in 2011. It's called Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. And people found value in that. And then Ryan and I moved out to Montana 4 years ago, wrote our second book called Everything That Remains. It was a memoir about the last 4 years of our lives. And so that was a different vehicle to share our message. But then we also went out on tour. We've been out on a bunch of tours. The largest tour we ever did was back in 2014. We did 100 cities over the course of 10 months in 8 different countries, 119 different events. And during that process, it was a different vehicle to communicate our message of simple living. And in fact, you can see that much of that tour in our new documentary, which is called Minimalism. It's on Netflix now, for those of you who are just tuning in. It's also everywhere else. You can find all the details to that and watch the trailer, share the trailer as well at minimalismfilm.com. And what we learned is that over time, there were all these different vehicles to share our message of simple living with other people. Again, not in any way trying to convert anyone or convince anyone that minimalism is the path you must follow. It's a path that can lead to a more fulfilling life, a more meaningful life. And that really starts with the stuff, by letting go of the excess stuff. But the real purpose of minimalism has to do with the benefits we experience once we're on the other side of decluttering. And so over the last 6 years, we've found these different vehicles, whether it's our blog or our books. We've written 3 books together. Minimalism with a Meaningful Life, the memoir, which is called Everything That Remains. That's my favorite thing I've ever created. And also we have an essay collection called Essential. And it's 12 different chapters on 12 different topics of living a more intentional life. Everything from minimalism and stuff to finances and relationships and decluttering and mindfulness and success and everything in between. And those are just some of the vehicles we've used. But last year we started a podcast. We have the Minimalists podcast now, and many of you are subscribers to that. We also have social media as a vehicle. Now, why are all these vehicles important? Well, I think they're important because different people find value in different vehicles. And it's also important to note that we didn't start out and try to tackle all of these vehicles at once. I think we would have failed. We started out with a blog, with a website, and we started writing essays. We spent that first year doing that, and then eventually we had so many people asking, when are you going to write a book? When are you going to write a book? That eventually we did write a book. And from there, we started using social media more regularly because people found value in that. Because we also realized that, you know what? Of all the books that are sold, fewer than 10% of people make it past the first chapter of a book they buy. So I could sell 100,000 copies of a book, and while that sounds really impressive, only 10% of those people, 10,000 people, are going to even make it past the first chapter. Even a smaller percentage are going to make it to the end of the book. So even if you write a really compelling book and sell a bunch of copies, it's not going to reach nearly as many people as maybe a TEDx talk would, or a video on YouTube or Facebook. And so the question I ask whenever we use a new vehicle to create and to share value with other people is, that question is, does this add value? And what I mean by that is, does it serve a purpose or bring people joy in any way? And so even if it's a tweet, if it's a funny joke that I want to tweet, or something I think is a funny joke, if I want to tweet that, then I'm going to ask before I send it, is this going to serve the greater good? Is this going to add value to someone's life? And so we found these different vehicles along the way, and back in the end of 2013, so 3 years ago now, about half the life of the Minimalists so far, we partnered up with a very talented director named Matt Diavella. He's from New York City. And he has done a bunch of really amazing commercial work, a very talented visual genius, but hadn't done a feature-length film yet. And he had wanted to do something meaningful with his creative skills and talents. And so he decided, you know what, if I can partner up with these guys, after we talked him into it, basically, I can create something meaningful. And so 3 years ago, we started working on a documentary. And we did that because we didn't want this journey to continue to just be the Josh and Ryan show. It's great that we have a message that we're able to communicate with people, and they're able to find value in it. But let's show people there are other lifestyles out there as well. So with the documentary, we went out there and we interviewed minimalist families and minimalist architects and minimalist entrepreneurs and travelers and tiny house enthusiasts and economists and neuropsychologists and neuroscientists, and we found that there are basically all of these different views on living a more intentional life. We wanted to meld those together to show people that minimalism isn't this radical lifestyle, it is a practical lifestyle. And quite often, people hear this word minimalism and they think radical, right? They think stark white walls, and they think owning no possessions. And minimalism can certainly do that for you if that's what you prefer. In fact, one of the guys in the film is a good friend of mine. His name's Colin Wright, and he owns, I think, 52 things in the entire world. Everything he owns fits in his backpack. And while I find that to be admirable, it's not the same life that I want to emulate. And so that was one prescription for minimalism, or one way that minimalism could help your life. Now, he does that because he likes traveling to new countries, and he travels all the time. He's a full-time traveler, and so him owning a kitchen table is actually getting in the way of travel. And so I saw the other side of things too, with people like Leo and Eva Bobalta. Leo's in the documentary. He has 6 kids. He and his wife Eva have 6 kids, and they're a whole minimalist family. And then we have people in the suburbs, we have people in the city, we have people in tiny houses, we have people who are living the lives that are appropriate to their life. We also backed it up with much of the science and social science behind the benefits of minimalism. And so this documentary was another vehicle to communicate that, right? And And so, will we use this vehicle in the future? Will we create other documentaries? Yeah, probably. What that will look like? Will it be a feature-length film? Will it be a TV show? Will it be video essays? Will it be live Q&A sessions? More of these online in the future? Yes, probably to all of those. The key is, am I excited about working on this project, and am I willing to put in the drudgery to make it happen? Because, like I said, it took 3 years to make this documentary and then get it out into the world appropriately. We spent 2 years creating the thing and then a year getting it out into the world, and we did a theater tour, 400 plus cities that it went into theaters, but then we also did a 15 city tour along with that. We put it out online. We've had to do a lot of things in order to get this creation out into the world. And so the next question is, what am I going to say yes to? And is that going to be a video thing? Is it going to be another book? Is it going to be a different type of vehicle, different type of creation? And my answer is, I don't know yet exactly what it looks like. We have some ideas that Ryan and I are throwing around. In fact, next year in 2017, we want to hit the road with 6 simple ideas in front of some small crowds, because we've been fortunate enough to garner a large audience and have some fairly large crowds at our events, but once we're ready with some of these ideas, we're going to hit the road and bring them to some small crowds and try to work them out in front of an audience before we film them or write them or do whatever we're going to do with these new ideas. So that's my short answer. Are we going to do another film in the future? Yeah, maybe. But if I say yes to that, that means I have to say no to everything else so that I can create the best thing possible. And so stay tuned. If you're not on our mailing list already, our email list, you'll know about any tour dates we do or any new creations we put out there. You can just go to theminimalists.com, enter your email there, and we'll never ever send you spam, because spam is disgusting. Sean, do we have another question?
We have quite a few.
Nice.
There are quite a few folks on here, Josh, that were asking about veganism. Your thoughts on veganism,
yes,
especially health benefits and the minimal impact on the planet, where
Sure.
you stand on that?
Yeah, so asking about veganism, or let's just expand out a little bit on that. Let's just talk about diet in general. My diet is over 90% plant-based, and I think that's important because many of these lifestyles we tend to think of as binary. So if you take minimalism as a lifestyle, it's not about owning nothing, it's about owning what's appropriate for my life. And I think you can extrapolate that and transpose it onto this idea of diet as well, whether that's veganism or vegetarianism or whatever you want to call it. Most of my diet is plant-based, although this year I just started incorporating red meat back into my life because I've had a significant number of health issues. You can go back and listen to episode number 30 of our podcast. It's an episode called Away, and you can check that out at theminimalists.com/podcast. I'll talk about some of my health issues. But one of the things I found out is I am anemic, and so I don't have a taste for red meat at all, but I did start incorporating meat as medicine back into my life, and the good news is I'm no longer anemic, which is great for me, but it's also helping me refocus on other aspects of my life as well, right? And so, I should say other aspects of my diet as well. I probably have the most pristine diet of anyone that I know, and it's because I've faced a lot of health issues over the years. Throughout my late 20s, I was on a long round of antibiotics, and it really killed my gut microbiome, and so I'm working on repopulating that. I'm working with actually a team of a couple doctors and a consultant and a food scientist, and my partner Becca, who's over here on the other side of the room. She is a registered dietitian and the best cook that I know. By the way, if you want some great recipes, you can check out her website. It's minimalwellness.com. And I think 100% of her recipes are gluten-free too. So my diet, the cornerstones of my diet are the things that I avoid most. So I avoid processed foods, including sugar. I mean, sugar is a processed food. But let's just make that a separate category. I avoid sugar, and then I tend to avoid gluten, and I have a relatively low carbohydrate diet. Relative to the standard American diet, but it's certainly not a what one would call a ketogenic diet. I'm not below 100 grams of carbs a day, but I still have a relatively low carb diet. But I'm eating real foods, and I think that's the that's the key to a healthy diet for me is am I eating a primarily plant-based diet, relatively balanced diet, and it is essentially everything that I put into my body a real food. And so if you want to read more about my specific diet, you can just go to theminimalists.com/diet. You can see exactly what I eat and how I eat it. What's our next question, Sean?
All right, let's do a holiday one here since we just had the holiday episode. We have a viewer that's dealing with family that's demanding that they exchange gifts and they get offended when they don't.
Okay, so we're talking about holidays, family members who get offended that they don't want to participate in the holiday gift exchange. Well, a few things. We've gone through this year personally. Becca's smiling right now. So we have a 3-year-old, Ella, who you can follow on Twitter at Ella Sandwich. She says a lot of hilarious things. But let's see here. So Becca's family does a sort of white elephant gift exchange at Christmas time, and for whatever reason, Becca decided to opt out and said, I've already got everything that I need, but let me opt Ella into this great gift exchange, and everyone in her family is like, no, everyone wants to buy Ella a gift this year, right? Because we all want to give, and we've been told this, and so it's part of our culture. We've been indoctrinated to believe that gift giving is what? It's a love language. I think that's like saying Pig Latin is a romance language. The truth is that gift giving, in its most literal sense, is not a love language. What we mean by gift giving is a love language. We mean contribution is a love language. And so quite often we confuse giving a physical shiny object. Look, I got you this shiny thing right here. This shows you how much I love you, right? No, it shouldn't show you how much I love you. My daily actions, how I behave every day toward you shows you how much I care, how much I love you. Yet in our culture we've gotten confused, and we think that because I give you something, that shows how much I love you. And by the way, now I have this expectation. It's called obligatory gift giving, right? And I think that giving gifts on the holidays are actually one of the worst times to give a gift, because everyone's expecting a gift. Hey, it's December 25th. I got you this widget. What widget did you get from me? Let's compare and contrast so I can see how much you care about me relative to how much I care about you. What a terrible way to celebrate a holiday, right? Especially for these so-called Hallmark holidays, right? Valentine's Day is, I think, probably the most grotesque example. Here, I bought you some shiny rocks that someone may have lost a limb for, and to show you that I care about you. And now you give me whatever thing that shows me you care about me. I prefer, so let's talk about gift giving in general. I prefer two things. First off, three things really. First off, I prefer to gift experiences over stuff. And so I think during the holidays, instead of it saying, I don't want to participate in your stupid gift giving process, I think it's silly, well, that's just going to turn everyone off and make everyone upset. Why? You don't want to do that for the holiday. That's not your outcome, right? Your outcome is, yes, I want to enjoy the holidays with you. Well, how can you do that? Well, instead of physical gifts, let's replace the gifts with experiences. And so find experiences that will resonate with you. And if you have kids especially, part of that experience might mean, we had someone call into our podcast to talk about this recently. I think part of that experience is maybe you have to also buy a babysitter so that the parents can go out and have a good experience on their own, right? Maybe it's concert tickets or a movie or just a night out by themselves. Or maybe it's an experience for the whole family. Recently, Bax and I, we took Ella to go Christmas tree hunting. You can actually go back and listen to our holiday episode on the podcast. It was episode number 41, and I talked about that experience. It was quite the challenging experience because we almost died Christmas tree hunting, but it makes it a much more memorable experience, doesn't it? But even if we wouldn't have been in any danger, we've done. This is the second year in a row we've gone out Christmas tree hunting, and that's an experience that for $5 you go buy a Christmas tree permit, and you just go cut. You spend the afternoon hunting a Christmas tree, going out finding one in areas that you're allowed to find one. And a lot of states do this. It's not just out in Montana or Minnesota. places like that. A lot of states will allow you to do this. And you find a Christmas tree and you make an experience out of that. There are a bunch of other experiences. So ask yourself, what experiences do you find meaningful? What experience would you find meaningful? Would your family find meaningful? And maybe encourage them to gift those to you. And then also, you want to lead by example, obviously. Gift those experiences to them, right? And so I think now is a great time to start to shift the paradigm. Now, I say start to shift, right? Because when is the best time to talk about Christmas gifts? It's February. You're already way, way, way too late. And so you're going to have to concede to some of the normal traditions and expectations because by definition, traditions are not very flexible. But you can implement new traditions next year, and you can start that now. You can start to plant the seeds for next year right now and make a little bit of room this year so that next year your holiday season is much more meaningful. And by the way, this holiday will be more meaningful by implementing some subtle changes in your tradition this year. So give some experiences. If you need to give a physical item, some of those experiences you can gift up. Maybe you can box up and hand into because someone wants that physical gift. And especially with kids, Ella loves unwrapping things. And so even if we're going to go do something, like we're going to take her to Florida this spring, and we'll give that to her for Christmas. But we're boxing that up, and so it's a wrapped experience, so to speak. And I find even that the experience of unwrapping is in and of itself another experience that they get to enjoy. For her birthday this year, I wrapped up a pineapple and gave it to her, and also blew up a bunch of balloons. So she came downstairs and there were balloons everywhere, and she just loves balloons. And so again, another experience that you wouldn't think of as a traditional gift giving experience. What else? If you're going to absolutely give gifts, though, physical gifts, if you need to, why not gift consumables, right? A nice bottle of wine or a really great bag of coffee from one of your favorite coffee roasters. A few of my favorites are Dogwood Coffee and Heart Coffee Roasters, and there are a bunch of others out there too. You can go to our Instagram page @The Minimalists and see some of our favorite minimalist city finds. Whenever we go to a new city, we talk about some of our favorite coffees. You can also check out our coffee house in St. Petersburg, Florida, theminimalists.com/coffeehouse. You can see a photo tour of that. So gift a bag of coffee, a really great bag of coffee, or a bottle of wine, or what are other consumables that you can share and experience with someone else? Think about that. And you can give a physical item that once it's done, it's done. And I think that's pretty nice. The last thing I will tell you about gift giving is obligatory gifts. I avoid obligatory gift giving whenever I can. Well, what does that mean? So I already talked about December 25th, or well, today's December 25th. You have to give me a gift. Or today is February 14th. You have to give me some sort of gift, right? Okay, if you want to do that, that's fine. But how about today is March 8th? Why'd you give me this gift? Well, because I care about you. Now, I don't think that gift giving equals love, but I do think that you'll find value in this thing. And because I care about you, I want you to find value in the things I give you. Why am I going to wait until December 25th to give you that thing when I can give you this thing on March 3rd or November 11th or whenever? I want to show you I care about you every day. I don't want to wait till 6 or 7 days throughout the year to show you that I care. So if I think you'll find value in something, whether it's a physical good or an experience, let's not wait until the holiday. Let me show you I care about you right now, and let me show you I care about you every single day. Sean, what's our next question?
Well, we actually have quite a few students and teachers on here today, Josh. I guess they got out for Christmas early.
Mm-hmm.
So their concern is, how can you be a minimalist as a student, as a teacher, when you have so many physical books to deal with and physical papers to deal with, those physical items that are part of education? Sure.
So the question is about having tools necessary to do a task, and in this context specifically it has to do with education. So teachers or students who need to have a lot of books or a lot of paperwork, or in the teacher's case, my former spouse, she's an 8th grade teacher, and she had just so many accoutrements that she needed to adorn her classroom with, or at least thought she needed to adorn her classroom with. So a couple answers that I'll have here. One is minimalism is not about deprivation. And so as a minimalist, everything I own serves a purpose or brings me joy. And everything else I get out of the way. So we have to be honest about the things that we have. And so many of these things, if they're tools, they actually serve a purpose in your life. And so you can be a minimalist and still have a lot of tools to do the task you need to do. Now, the way to determine whether or not those tools actually add value to your life is through temporary deprivation sometimes. So again, minimalism is not about it's not about deprivation, but it can be about temporary deprivation to determine whether or not these things are adding value to your life. And so for me, I will quite often do experiments with different bits of technology. So whether it's my phone, I got rid of my phone for 60 days. I wrote about that over at theminimalists.com. And by letting go of that, I learned that I could bring it back into my life more deliberately. It was adding value to my life. And long term, I was actually depriving myself of that thing. I didn't want to do that at all, right? I wanted to have the thing as a tool, but I didn't want to be a slave to the tool. And so by removing it from my life, I brought it back in and I started using it differently. And so what if now's actually a really good time if you're a teacher and you're taking a break from those tools. Summer's especially a great time because you have to tear down your classroom and all that other stuff. Or if you're a student as well, if you remove those things temporarily from your life, put them in a basement or a closet or the trunk of your car or whatever for a temporary period of time, and then realize what did add value and what you just thought was adding value to your life. And I think that's important because quite often we mistake perceived value for real value. And it's one of the most common mistakes. And the other thing that we mistake just in case items for value adding items. So we often hold on to many of these accoutrements that we have for classrooms or studying or whatever. I was talking to Ryan about this the other day. For a long time, when he was going through his packing party, he still had these old he's a huge fan of math and was really into mathematics, but he had all these calculus textbooks and notes, and he couldn't even decipher most of the notes that he had, but he was holding on to them just in case he needed them someday in some non-existent hypothetical future. And I've learned that just in case are the three most dangerous words in our English language, and we have to be willing to let go of things we're holding on to just in case. And quite often we can figure out what we're holding on to just in case by temporarily depriving ourselves of those things and then bringing them back in, but using them differently when we do. I went without home internet for a very long time, and that was a very powerful experience, one of the most productive times of my life. It allowed me to write 3 books during... Oh, I had a call coming in there. I had to decline it. All right. Anyway, what else have I deprived myself of? The phone I already mentioned. I went without... television for a very, very long time, about 9 years without television. And I still don't have like what would be considered traditional TV, but Bex and I do enjoy once or twice a week watching a film or a really good TV show. Although I found that I'm just not as entertained anymore. Once I've removed that pacifier from my life for a very long time, there are very few things that I'm like eager to watch. But then the things I am eager to watch, like last night we finished the 9th episode of Westworld, which is such a good TV show. And if you haven't seen it yet and you have an opportunity to see it, I would encourage you to see it because it spurs some really great conversations about consciousness and morality and artificial intelligence. And there's so many great, just well-written lines in that thing too. We will pause it and rewind lines and watch it. And so I found a way to bring that back into my life in a much, much more deliberate way. So I'm using those tools much more deliberately than I would have if I were just to continue to coast on that pacifier mode. But that also means that I constantly need to reevaluate and keep asking this question: does this add value to my life? And if I'm honest with myself, I can temporarily deprive myself and let go of something for a period of time and then bring it back in a much more intentional fashion. And so try that with many of the things. Also, I will tell you that I think physical clutter is much more problematic than digital clutter. It doesn't mean that digital clutter is not a problem. In fact, Ryan and I did an entire episode on technology of our podcast. So go to episode number 2 of the Minimalists podcast. It's an entire episode about technology. But I will tell you this. I used to own 2,000 books. 2,000 books. Now, some of those I had actually read, but let's be honest, most of them I bought with the intention of reading someday, but it was just like a just-in-case item. You go to the bookstore and you buy 5, 6, 7, 8 books, and you're like, oh my God, I can't read that fast even, right? I'm lucky if I read, well, I'm lucky if I get past page 50 in a book. If I get past page 50, it tends to be a masterpiece, because I refuse to waste my time on getting to the end of a book. But I had this huge bookshelf on my wall, huge bookshelf with 2,000 books, and I realized it was part of my identity. I had those because it made me look smart. And when people came over, I'd say, oh yeah, I've got this book, and oh, you've actually read Infinite Jest, yeah, okay. But the truth is that the value isn't in the artifact itself. The value is in the experience of the book, of reading the book. And then by letting go of those books, I could add value to other people's lives, because someone else could then experience those words as well. So I now have a much smaller physical book collection. It's a well-curated book collection, maybe of 60, 70 books total. And those are books that I tend to go back and reference. They're books I've really enjoyed that I like to share with other people. And the new books I bring in, occasionally I'll have a physical book, but for the most part, I use ebooks. And so I don't know what your preferred e-reader is. Mine happens to be a Kindle. And in fact, often at night, I'll read to Bex. We were reading last night before we went to bed. And most of the time, that is just with the Kindle that I have there at my bedside, right? And so I found that books were especially problematic for me when I went through this experience of moving, and I had to move 2,000 books. And when you pull the books off the shelf, they're really light when you put them in a box one at a time. But you fill up a huge box of books, and it's pretty damn heavy. And so I threw my back out, moving a huge box of books. And so when people tell me that, well, digital clutter is just as problematic as physical clutter, I will tell them to try to move 2,000 physical books and then try to move 2,000 books on their Kindle. And you tell me which is more difficult. That's not to say that we don't need to organize things digitally. I think it's important to do that. But I think the biggest problem is the external clutter that we experience. I think our physical clutter is a physical manifestation of what's going on inside us. And so by clearing the external clutter, we're able to start dealing with the internal clutter, which ultimately helps us deal with the eternal clutter that we're all facing, the existential clutter that we're all facing. What's our next question? Oh, and by the way, if you have a bunch of papers, scan them. Have a scanning party. Go to theminimalists.com/scanning. See the scanner that I use personally. Get rid of all your extra photos and paperwork and actually store them digitally so that you have a backup if anything were to happen to them. And you can do the same with your textbooks as well. If you really feel like I need to hold on to this textbook, you can send that off to someone. There's a company called $1scan.com. And you can send your stuff off to them. They'll scan it for you, and then they'll incinerate the paperwork you've sent them. They'll deal with the clutter for you. What's next, Sean?
Well, we had several questions from some folks about your thoughts on tiny houses, and you could kind of riff on too, renting versus buying.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about living in general. So questions about tiny houses and questions about renting versus buying, or just living situations. So one of the segments in our documentary, which for those of you just tuning in, is now available on Netflix. It's called Minimalism, a documentary about the important things. One of the things we did was we wanted to show various lifestyles in terms of home life, right? And so we have folks from the tiny house movement, which I really admire, but I'm not really into tiny house living. I don't want to live in a tiny home myself, especially with a family. I think it would be prohibitive. But even if I was by myself, while I would find it more appealing, I don't find it as appealing. I enjoy having more space, not large amounts of space, but an appropriate amount of space. In fact, we interviewed an architect in our documentary. His name's Frank. And he kept using this word that it stuck with me. And in fact, I think it is the perfect word, or the perfect metaphor for minimalism. He's a minimalist architect. He talks about when he builds a house for someone, he doesn't ask them, do you want a living room? Or do you want a dining room? Or do you want 3 bedrooms? Or do you want whatever, an entertainment room? Because ultimately, we tend to say yes. Do I want a dining room? I think I'm supposed to have a dining room, so yes. Instead, he asks you, how do you live your life? And he has people expand on that question. How am I going to live my life? And then he builds a house around that life instead of trying to cram a life into the house. And so I think that's what's important. So whether you're living in a tiny house, the question is that appropriate for you? Or are you living in a micro apartment? So in the documentary, most of you saw Graham Hill, who has this 420 square foot apartment, and it is an amazing apartment. It sleeps 7, I believe. It has a home theater, and it has a full kitchen. It has a dining room table that seats 12. It has a home office with a stand-up desk. It has a full bathroom with a shower. But it's 420 square feet in the middle of Manhattan. And you're like, how is this possible? Well, it's a modular apartment. It's much more functional than most 2,000 square foot apartments. We also had a couple in there, David Freelander and his wife Jacqueline, and they had 520 or 560 square foot micro apartment in Brooklyn. And what they had learned through a lot of study is that we use about 40% of our homes on a monthly basis. That means 60% of our homes in America go unused. And the average house being built last year is over 4,000 square feet. And in addition to that, we have 2.2 billion square feet of storage space. So we're building houses that still aren't big enough to hold all of our crap. That is not a housing problem. That is a stuff problem, right? And the cool thing about finding a space that is appropriate for you, it in some ways forces you to get rid of the excess stuff, because you're not going to have a bunch of storage space. I remember when I first moved to Missoula, Montana, we started a publishing company called Asymmetrical Press. It was me and Ryan and our friend Colin. We were looking for houses to rent, and we found a house that would have been perfect, but it had a ton of storage space. And I know for some people that is a selling point, but for me, it said no. It made me say no. We're paying for a bunch of wasted space. I don't want that. There was these huge walk-in closets. Like, what do I need a walk-in closet for? Now, some people, that may be appropriate for their life. Generally, it's probably not. The average American household has 300,000 items in it, and for most of us, that's because we've crammed a life into the house we've been given instead of trying to build a home or fit a home around the lifestyle that we want. So if you want to see a tour of Beck's and my minimalist home, you can go to theminimalists.com/Milburn. That's my last name. And you can see Ryan and his partner Mariah. They live in a loft in Missoula. And you can find that at theminimalists.com/Nicodemus. Now, what I'll tell you this is my life has changed over the years, right? So the things that, when I first embraced minimalism, the things that added value to my life at age 28 aren't the same things that add value to my life at age 35. And vice versa is true. My life has changed, so I bring new things into my life that add value now. And so I'm constantly asking that question, does this add value to my life? And if not, I have to be willing to let go so that I can focus on only that which is important and have the excess, sort of clear the path toward living my best life and being my best self. And so I'm constantly aspiring to be, I'm 35 now, I'm aspiring to be my 36-year-old self. I want to be the best version of myself. And part of that includes the clutter that I bring into my living space. So you can see a bunch of different living perspectives, including Joshua and Kim Becker and their 2 kids. They live in a house in the suburbs, and that house is appropriate for their lifestyle. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all. I think it'd be great if there were, because it'd be easy if I could hand you your list of here's the 1,000 items you're supposed to own, and here's the square footage you're supposed to have to be happy. And for each new kid that you bring on board, you're supposed to have this many items and this many additional square feet. It just doesn't work that way, because your life is different from mine, and so the things that add value to your life may not add value to my life. And so we have to keep asking that question. What's next?
All right, Josh, we've got a lot of folks on here that have seen the documentary and are highly complimentary and passing that back and forth with each other. And a question that's come up a few times, 2 of these that you can actually combine. One, what is the simplest, most succinct way to explain to others what minimalism is, without sounding happy, clappy, self-righteous?
Yeah.
and kind of roll with that into if you're just a lot of folks are just starting out with minimalism.
Mm-hmm.
How can you explain this and get your family involved, your
Yes.
spouse, your children?
Yeah. So how do you talk about minimalism? And then how do you get started with minimalism? And I'm going to make a third question there. How do you get other people on board with minimalism as well? And I think these all three flow together really nicely. So the first way you explain minimalism, when someone asks me, well, what is minimalism? In fact, I was just at Beck's brother just got married, and someone asked me about minimalism at the wedding reception. And when someone asks me about minimalism, I will answer their question with another question. I will say, how might your life be better with less? And I'll just pause and let them think about that for a moment. Now, I'm not positing that question to sound pious, but I want to get people to think about what minimalism is, because quite often we just think of getting rid of all of our stuff, or we think about minimalist architecture or minimalist literature, minimalist artwork, minimalist music, and those are all appropriate associations when you think about minimalism. But really, what we want to talk about is minimalism as a lifestyle. And so I'll ask this question, how might your life be better with less? And so when you're talking about how do I get started with minimalism, that's also how you get started with minimalism. You ask yourself that question, how might my life be better with less? Now, why ask that question in the first place? Well, we want to ask that question because we want to identify what the benefits of minimalism are. We all understand the how-to side of things, right? You know how to declutter your closet. You'll never see me and Ryan write the 413 tips on how to remove the clutter from your kitchen cabinets, because everyone knows the how-to side of things, at least for the most part. Now, some how-to little tips and tricks, those can be helpful. And so don't get me wrong, I think the how-to can be beneficial, but it's much more beneficial once you understand the much more powerful why-to. So how might your life be better with less is the why-to. It's the purpose behind minimalism. For me, it started off with regaining control of my finances. How might my life be better with less? Well, I made really good money in the corporate world. Back in my corporate days, I was a director of operations for 150 retail stores. And while that might sound impressive, it wasn't very fulfilling. In fact, instead of happiness and contentment, that career of working 70, 80 hours a week, it brought me a lot of stress and anxiety and debt and discontent and even more debt. Debt was a big feature of my life back then. In fact, I had 6 figures worth of debt. If you count my mortgage, I had $500,000 worth of debt. And so I made really good money, but I spent even better money. And so my life, my financial life, was out of control, and it was the biggest anchor of my life. And I can tell you, if you don't have financial freedom, you're going to feel anchors everywhere else in your life. You're going to be tied to a particular lifestyle. And for me, I wanted to get out of debt. And so regaining control of the way I was spending my money, minimalism allowed me to do that. But then I started uncovering all these other benefits as well. As I started simplifying my life, what else happened? Well, as I simplified, I started regaining control of my health. And it turns out I've had forsaken my health for most of my adult life. At one point, I weighed 80 pounds more than I weigh now. But I also forsook the people closest to me. So my relationships were in shambles because most of my relationships were birthed out of proximity or convenience. And I was spending 90% of my time with people on the periphery, the tertiary tier of relationships, the coworkers, the networking buddies, the executives, the people who I thought had influence. And because of that, the people I said I really cared about and loved, I said, oh, they'll understand. I'll spend more time with them one day, someday. And I realized I needed to change that word someday. I need to flip it around and turn it well, I needed to say, instead of saying one day, I needed to say, today is day one, right? Flip that around and say, now is when I need to prioritize those relationships. And minimalism allowed me to do that and start focusing on what was important to me, the relationships that were important to me. Also, what other benefits might you experience by letting go? How else might your life be better with less? Well, for some people, it's like, I really want to focus on, I've always wanted to start yoga, or I wanted to focus on this passion project. I've always wanted to write a novel or write this book or start a blog, or I've wanted to travel my whole life. These are all great benefits if that's really what you want to do. And if there's something in the way, perhaps minimalism is a really good first step toward pursuing that value in your life. It's going to help you identify what your values are. In fact, Ryan and I wrote about these 5 values that we uncovered in our first book called Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. once we got the excess stuff out of the way, we said, okay, what's most important to us? Because it was strange. I was ostensibly successful, but I didn't actually know what was important to me. And so I was successful in a narrow sense, like I had a prestigious job title and I supposedly made a good amount of money, but I wasn't fulfilled by that lifestyle. And so how do you reach fulfillment? How do you reach a meaningful life? It's not by pursuing happiness. In fact, I think happiness is often the problem of our culture, the constant pursuit of happiness. We confuse happiness with ephemeral pleasure, with ephemeral indulgences. We say, well, I'm going to be happy if I get this thing. Temporary pleasure is not the same thing as long-lasting happiness. I think happiness has much more to do with living a meaningful life. It's a byproduct of living a meaningful life. And what that means is aligning your short-term daily actions with what your long-term values are. And so the values that Ryan and I uncovered were health, relationships, passion, or what you might call creativity, and then growth and contribution. And focusing on those things allows me to live a much more meaningful life and as a result be happier. Yes, I am much happier at age 35 than I was at age 27, but again, I don't think happiness is the point. I think living a more meaningful life is the point, and happiness is a beautiful byproduct of that. And so now the question that just means, well, how do I get others on board? How do I force minimalism onto my spouse, my sister, my mother, my brother, my child? You don't. It's like, how do you force them to play ice hockey? That'd be a little weird, wouldn't it? If someone was asking me that question, I'd be like, well, why would you want to force someone to play an ice hockey, right? Well, here's the problem, though, or the paradox, I should say. With minimalism, it is much easier if you have other people in your life on board. And so I think some ways to do that are to express the benefits to them. So when you're asking the question, how might your life be better with less? You also want to show them how your life might be better with less, right? Now, you want to show them how your life is better with less. Now, for me, I didn't jump up and say, look at me, I'm becoming a minimalist, and you need to too. Instead, people at work started saying, you're less stressed, or you're happier, or you're calmer, or what the hell is going on with you? You've totally changed. And that opened up the door for me to talk about minimalism by way of the benefits I was experiencing. Now, why did they care? Because they cared about the benefits. They didn't care about decluttering their closet. If you don't know why you're decluttering your closet, it'll just be cluttered again a month from now, 2 months from now, a week from now, whatever. But if you know the why, that gives you the momentum you need to keep going even when times are difficult. Because quite often we confuse excitement for long-lasting results. We'll get excited about an idea. I really wanted to clean up and declutter my home. But if you don't know why you're doing it, you're going to end up exactly back where you were. But if you viscerally understand the purpose, emotionally understand the purpose of letting go, you'll be able to keep going. Now, how else do we get started? I'll give you a few tips. One is play the 30-day minimalism game. You can find the details to that, also tens of thousands of other people who have been playing it by searching the hashtag over on Instagram or Twitter. It's hashtag MinsGame, M-I-N-S game. Just go to theminimalists.com/game. Here's how it works. At the beginning of a new month, you partner up with someone, a friend, a family member, a coworker, an enemy, whomever, someone you decide to get rid of some stuff with. And now you bet whatever you want. You bet $1, a nice meal, a trip somewhere. Bet whatever you want to bet. Bragging rights. And then at the beginning of the month, you decide, we're going to get rid of some stuff. It starts out really easy because the first day of the month, you each get rid of 1 item. Day 2, 2 items. Day 3, 3 items. Starts to pick up. You start to get that momentum you need. And it fuels the fire with some friendly competition. I don't know about you, but I think decluttering is kind of boring. For those of you who think decluttering is awesome, I applaud you. Good for you. Wow. I don't think decluttering is exciting. So if you think it's boring like I do, then you're going to make it a little more fun with some friendly competition. And so partner up with someone, start out simple, but it gets more difficult as the month progresses, right? Because day 15, you're getting rid of 15 items. Day 16, 16 items. Oh my goodness, what 17 items am I going to get rid of tomorrow? Day 20, it's even more difficult. Day 25. Now, whoever goes the longest throughout the month wins. If you both make it to the end of the month, you've both won. because you've both gotten rid of about 500 items, and that's a really good start. And we've had many people who continue to play beyond the 30 days, or they'll even start over on day 31, or maybe you just go to day 40, it's 40 items. Whatever you want to do, you continue to put a dent in that. Now you ask about what are the rules? What does a hanger count? Does a paperclip count? Whatever you want to count counts. Be honest with yourself. Establish the same rules together. It's flexible. The purpose is to get that momentum. I find that many people who start out on this journey, they can't wait to get way past 500 items, because once you get that momentum, letting go gets easier by the day. The more you do it, the freer and happier and lighter you feel, and the more stuff you want to throw overboard. And then as you do that, other people will jump on board. In our house, we have a donation box. We constantly have Ella, who wants to donate everything now. Even if she doesn't like her dinner that evening, she'll try to donate it, which is quite comical. But I think we're starting to establish a habit early, realizing that if I let go of some of these things, you know what? Other people can find value in it. Just because something doesn't add value to my life doesn't mean it won't add value to someone else's life. And so my willingness to let go is also my willingness to add value to other people's lives. A few other rules that might help you along the way. I'm going to recommend the 90-90 rule. You can find that at our website, theminimalists.com/90. And how that works is, have I used this item in the last 90 days? Am I going to use it in the next 90 days? If not, I give myself permission to let go of it. That typically accounts for seasonality, because if I go back 90 days now, it's going to be summertime. And if I go back forward 90 days, it's going to be springtime. And so you're gonna for the most part cover all seasons with that. And if not, I'm willing to let go of it, donate it, sell it. I tend to try to sell things that are greater than $250. If not, I try to donate the thing. Another rule that might help you out, the 20-20 rule. We also call this the just-in-case rule. Now, I realized that many of the things I was holding on to, thousands of items, if not tens of thousands of items, I was holding on to just in case. But I realized that many of those items that I was holding on to just in case, I could replace for less than $20 and less than 20 minutes from wherever I am. And that rule has held up for me, and I've only had to use it 5 times in the last 5 years. And since we came up with that rule, and the cool thing about that is it's given me permission to let go of tens of thousands of items, just in case items, because I know I'm not actually going to have to replace them. And the 5 times I've had to use it, that means I've spent $100 in 5 years. It's not like you're going out and replacing all these just in case items every single day. No, you barely ever have to use that. And the rules worked 100% of the time for me. My guess is it probably works 99% of the time. I'm sure there's an exception that proves the rule. One last rule, or actually it's a theory. I call it the 10-10 material possessions theory. It comes from a book called Spent. And the way that works is you take a piece of paper. On the front of that piece of paper, you look at the last decade, and you look at your 10 most expensive purchases over the last decade. And you flip the piece of paper over, and you write down the 10 most meaningful experiences over the last decade. And then you will just be shocked when you compare the two lists, and you find out that probably not a single item on there corresponds, or maybe one item corresponds to. And what that helped me realize is that, you know what, there are so many things I've brought into my life because I thought it was going to augment my life experience, but it wasn't actually augmenting my life experience. In fact, many of the times it was just getting in the way of my most meaningful experiences in life. And so before I tune out here, we're at the hour mark. I want to remind those of you who are just tuning in, our documentary is finally available on Netflix. It's called Minimalism, a documentary about the important things. And thank you so much to everyone who has rated it so far. It's really close to 5 stars. If you find value in the film, and only if you find value in the film, if you'd be willing to leave it a 5-star rating and a review, we'd greatly appreciate it. Whether you saw it on Netflix, or if it's not available on Netflix, wherever you are, you can find it on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, in most countries, or worldwide on Vimeo. The cool thing about the Vimeo link, by the way, is it has 6 hours of bonus content that is exclusive to Vimeo. So you can dive deeper into the interviews. You can find those even if you watch the film on Netflix or any other platform. You can get just the bonus content over at Vimeo as well. You can find links to all that stuff over at minimalismfilm.com. You can interact with us over on social media, wherever you find us. We're at The Minimalists pretty much everywhere. And if you leave here today with just one message, I hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for your time, y'all. I'll see you next time.